It's a great privilege, a great honor to be invited to speak this afternoon in India International Science Festival. I'm very happy that it is being held in Goa. As probably all of you know, I was born in Goa. I consider Goa as God's greatest gift to India. Its beauty, its culture, it just stands out. I wish I was there personally. Can't make it, so my apologies. Secondly, I want to congratulate uh, India International Science Festival. They have become the largest such platform in India, and it's growing by the day, creating enormous impact, enormous influence. So my heartiest congratulations. The topic that I have chosen today is green hydrogen for India's green future. And the reasons for these are obvious, because as we know, the climate change is an extremely, I would say, worrisome phenomenon in terms of our future. And if you just see the Climate Change 2021, the Physical Science Basis report, it shows how climate change is spreading wide, spreading rapidly, and intensifying massively. So if you look through some details, for example, if you see the global surface temperature change relative to 1850 1900, and the way it had moved gradually and then accelerated, and there are different scenarios that have been built. What SSP means is the shared socio-economic pathways. And the two letters, the first one and the second one, the first one connects with the shared socio-economic pathways, the second on level of radiative, the forces, forcing from the scenario in 2100. But suffice to say that as greenhouse emissions increase, as you see in this particular order, the rise in temperature relative to 1850, 1900 is going to rise very, very significantly. If you just see the next slide, which shows the changes in global surface temperature relative to what it was in 1850, 1900, two things that stand out. It shows that the change in global surface temperature, a decadal average, which is shown here, was almost steady here. And if you see here, the warming is unprecedented in more than 2000 years. You can just see this sharp increase. And also, there is no question that this is because of the human activity, because here are the data that the report gives. This is the simulated nature only, that is solar and volcanic and other activities. But the observed one, where the simulated human and natural actions are put together, and you can see quite clearly the difference. So it is the human, without doubt, that is causing this particular change. And therefore, our future is in our hand. Now, if you look at the global mean sea level change relative to 1900, once again, as the intensity of greenhouse gas emissions increase, you can see the rise. And this low likelihood, high impact storyline, including ice sheet instability processes under these severe conditions, you can see how it is going to be very, very detrimental to our future. If you look at the fact, again, there is a scientific basis to show that every ton of carbon dioxide emission adds to global warming. And there is a linear relationship between cumulative carbon dioxide emissions and the increase in global surface temperature, as you can see from these data. So decarbonization, therefore, is the key, because carbon dioxide is the culprit. Now, if you see the projected changes in extremes, they are larger in frequency incentive with every additional increment of global warming. And you can see if on a 10-year event, if it was 1.2 degrees centigrade higher as against 1.9, 2.6, 5.1, etc., you can see the likely events change substantially, just as you see in this thing also. So this is a serious issue. And I'm very happy that under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Modi, we have actually not only been proactive, but also set some very ambitious, very aggressive target for ourselves. What are these? And these comes from the COP26 meeting and India's statement that Honorable Prime Minister called it Panchamrit. There are 5 points that he has made. The first is 500 gigawatt renewable energy installed capacity by 2030. That's looks like a tall target, but if you see, within the last decade itself, India has shown the fastest growth in solar energy installations, for example, by a factor of 8 almost. So it is possible to move with that great speed. He has also made a statement that 50% of renewable energy contribution to energy mix by 2030, reducing carbon dioxide emissions by 1 gigaton from now till 2030, the carbon intensity of GDP to be less than 45% by 2030, and achieve net zero emissions by 2070. That is quite ambitious. And I'm going to pick up on this particular point because to achieve this, there are a large number of different ways. So I didn't want in this lecture to give you some 20 things that we should be doing. I'm just picking up on one that has caught the imagination of the world. And what is that? That is about hydrogen. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts on hydrogen for net zero emissions. What I like to do is to see first whether green hydrogen is a hype or a hope, then look at what is the global scenario, then look at the Indian scenario, and then most importantly, because this is after all India International Science Festival, we are interested in science, technology, research and development. So what is it that we can do in green hydrogen? And then what next? If you see the hydrogen hype cycle, expectations versus time, the innovation trigger came really when the 1973 oil crisis happened. And then there was a peak of inflated expectations, early 2000s. And then the focus of fuel cell electric vehicles came. And then not much happened. And then the financial crisis came in 2008. And then gradually there was a slope of enlightenment. And then after 2010, it has been growing momentum. And now we have reached the plateau of productivity. This is a typical cycle. Now, if you see hydrogen for net zero emissions, which is the sort of title of my talk, and that's what I'm going to talk about, you can quite clearly see the latest report in November 2021. Okay, that means just last month. And what it shows is that the hydrogen scenario is going to change dramatically. And from 2020 to 2030, 40, 50, this is going to be the steep rise. And 660 million tons will be the hydrogen required for 2050 to get it to net zero. And if you look at different sectors which contribute, it is power generation, mobility, building and industry, heat, new industry, feed, and existing industry use. These are the different categories. And if you see across the nations, North America, Europe, China, Japan, Korea, and the rest of the world, you can quite clearly see, for example, the black represents the power generation. And whereas for Europe, it will be 95 million tons. For China, it will be 200 million tons. So the demand is going to be huge in some of the countries. Now, if you just say again, hydrogen for net zero report, just last month, November 2021, I'm giving you the latest data. you can quite clearly see that there are 522 announced megawatt scale projects already. And they're dominated in Europe and then followed by Asia and China and then North America. And you can quite clearly see that since last January report, there has been 50 to 100% increase. And that means the acceleration is actually huge. And there are big announcements in terms of finances for creating our green future. Now, this is happening in the world. I wanted to give you the global scenario. Then what's happening in India and why we must be thinking in terms of hydrogen? First of all, India's energy security, because hydrogen can reduce over $160 billion worth of imports for India in different, whether it is crude, natural gas, coal, petroleum, and so on and so forth. And that is very important for us. Secondly, India is the world's third largest emitter with 3.6 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent across sectors. And therefore, we must create significant reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, and green hydrogen can play a major role. Third is, Honorable Prime Minister has announced a target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy. Current capacity is 100 to 500 within a space of just 9 years. And this surplus electricity from India's renewable plants can also augment green hydrogen economics. So there are three solid reasons why we should be getting into green hydrogen. Now, if you see the picture, hydrogen for India, there are different sectors. And sector coupling for energy vector is critical to achieve any deep decarbonization of difficult sectors, because all these sectors that you see here. Now, there are three principles I like to lay down. First is abundant, affordable, and Atmanirbhar. The second is decentralization, digitization, and deep decarbonization. They will go together. And aim should be to create our enterprises who become even exporters and value add to our economy. So this has to be the grand strategy for hydrogen for India. Now, when you talk about hydrogen, you will hear about different colors. By the way, hydrogen is colorless, but it has been dubbed as gray hydrogen when it comes from fossil fuels. And there's a gasifier or a reformer which produces hydrogen, but at the same time carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is called gray hydrogen. Then in blue hydrogen, this carbon dioxide that is generated is captured and stored. Okay, so this is called blue hydrogen. Whereas in green hydrogen, the byproduct is oxygen only. There is no carbon dioxide. That's all. And this is done by splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. So we are here at the moment in gray hydrogen. We have to move to blue hydrogen and then to green hydrogen, or hopefully actually just jump to green hydrogen. And I'll come back to that later. Now, if you find investors are flooding into hydrogen economy. So since 2020, within a short time, $10.6 billion have flown into industry. So investors do believe that hydrogen has a great future. Now, there are global policy initiatives to push hydrogen adoption. And 75 countries have net zero carbon ambition. And 31 countries, and now 40, by the way, have national hydrogen strategies. There are, in Europe, for example, they put objective of 10-10-10 energy ministerial targets. That means 10 million fuel cell electric vehicles, 10,000 hydrogen fueling stations over the next 10 years, 10-10-10. And similarly, there are France, Germany, Spain. Each one has decided to invest. Even in the US, 15 states have signed MOU for 30% trucks sold to be zero emission. China is targeting 1 million fuel cell electric vehicles by 2030 and 10% of energy by hydrogen. So therefore, there is a huge movement. The main point I want to make is that globally there is a huge movement. And what should do, or should we do in India? That's what I'm going to talk about. And here it is. Once again, our charismatic leader, Honorable Prime Minister Modi at UNGA said that India to become world's biggest green hydrogen hub. India to become the world's biggest green hydrogen. We are answerable to future generations with our decision making. A very inspiring statement indeed. And we, of course, have the National Hydrogen Energy Mission going, which wants to deploy hydrogen energy for meeting energy security. And the key point there is the following, that we did have in 2006 India's first national hydrogen energy roadmap. And then the National Hydrogen Energy Mission was announced in February 21. And in different phases, we are wanting to move 21 to 24, 24 to 30. The total investments have been worked out. The market opportunities have been worked out, and MNRE is doing a great job. An additional green hydrogen demand that is being created. Now, in order to fulfill this mission, there are steps that are required. What are those? First of all, there is no point in supplying hydrogen if there is no demand. So we must develop market demand, market development to encourage private sector investment. Secondly, we must have pilot projects to demonstrate viability, infrastructure development, because hydrogen has to be moved from one place to the other. So just as we have the electric grids, we must create that. Then we have to create specific zones, hydrogen hubs, capable of supporting large-scale generation. And then indigenous manufacturing, make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And I like to say Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas, we have to do it. And not just make in India, but invent in India and make in India. All this will require a policy support. And as we speak, these policy recommendations are being drawn out by Niti Aayog and the government of India. And most importantly, we have to also create public awareness, because anytime new technology comes, people should not get scared. Oh my God, hydrogen, they will say hydrogen bomb and so on. It is not that. We have to create public awareness about hydrogen. Now, there are opportunities that are there across the value chain. Whether you are producing hydrogen, whether you are transporting or storing hydrogen, or whether you are using hydrogen. Now, in terms of using hydrogen, of course, fuel cells will be there to drive cars and trucks and buses, in refining, in residential commercial heating, in power generation, steel, glass, and so on and so forth. So we have to start thinking in terms of usage here. And then before that, of course, we have to transport that hydrogen, either store or transport. And there are different modes of doing that. And then, of course, we'll go to production. As I mentioned to you, gray, blue hydrogen is fine, but we have to move to green hydrogen. Okay, and that is done by electrolysis and so on and so forth. So production, transportation, utilization. And we have scope for research and development in each of these. Our Honorable Prime Minister said green hydrogen will be India's biggest goal for providing a quantum jump to address climate change. And he's right. And therefore, we have to set near-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. And here we give the details of how those near-term could be, how the mid-term would be, and the long-term would be. So we have to have a long-term plan. We can't do small-term thinking. Now, I'm very happy to see that the corporates are already moving aggressively into green energy, because finally it is not government which is going to produce hydrogen. It is the industry, both public sector as well as private sector. Look at Reliance, for example. Mukesh Ambani, the chairman, had announced investment of 75,000 crore in 3 years, almost $10 billion. And this was done on June 24, 2021. That means earlier this year. And then he also talked about 4 gigafactories that he will create. And then I've been on the board of Reliance from 2007. I've chaired their Reliance Innovation Council, but now he has also announced the New Energy Council, and I'm chairing it. And we have kind of words who's who as members of these, like, for example, Professor Martin Green here. If you look at solar word and look at the PERC cells that go in, 80% of the installation in the world uses his breakthrough PERC cells. So he's like a Mr. Solar. Similarly, we have Mr. Storage, Dr. Yazhami. We have Mr. Dr. Stasdale, who is like a Mr. Wind. We have Alan Finkel, who was chief scientist of Australia, like principal scientific advisor to Prime Minister. And he's the one who has laid down this. So all of them are helping us to design our strategy. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to sort of chair this. Now, when it comes to research and development, the green hydrogen R&D players will be, of course, from academia, national labs, startups. They are emerging as powerful players, by the way. Industry, public and private sector, there will be public-private partnerships, there will be global partnerships. So we have to take help of all of these. Now, if you see private sector, for example, I'm associated with this Sentient Labs, which is a new company floated by KPIT Technologies. I'm on their board and have been chairman of KPIT Technology Innovation Council. And what we are looking at is 200 metric tons per year of agri-waste as a source for hydrogen. And through energy farming, there can be new energy cane giving 40 million tons of acre of biomass. And then we already developed a breakthrough technology for producing hydrogen by a microbial conversion of agri-waste that is rich in cellulose and hemicellulose. And we can produce it at around 250 rupees per kilogram, that is around $3 plus. And that cost, of course, can be sort of brought down. Most importantly, it's a win-win situation because we have estimated that it will create additional income for farmers per acre of 30,000 rupees. And that's what we're looking at. And also, this will be decentralized because India just does not require centralization. It requires decentralization. Like I said, digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization, they are important. And plus, we estimate that around 500,000 jobs can be created during this process of agri-waste to green hydrogen. Besides stopping that nuisance of farmers burning, and you have seen the kind of effect that we have had on the atmosphere, all that can go. So this is a win-win. And we have to promote such activities. And of course, international partnerships are welcome, like Indian Oil Corporation, Greenstat Norway, they had Center of Excellence on Hydrogen. And Tata Motors and Indian Oil, they are partnering now to create a fuel cell, they call it fuel cell Starbus. And what they have done is they have sourced a 70 kilowatt fuel cell from Ballard Power Systems, okay? So we are dependent upon import of these. But the question I would like to ask is, we should not just be talking about assembled in India, but we should be talking about invented in India. And this is the previous one that we saw was actually first hydrogen fuel cell powered bus, but first hydrogen fuel cell powered bus based on imported fuel cells, okay, not indigenous fuel cells. What I am keen to see is that it is indigenous fuel cell bus, okay? We don't depend upon anybody. And I cannot give you the details because on 15 December, there will be a big launch of indigenous fuel cell based bus in Pune. And this is Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas. That's what we are going to do. So please watch out for 15 December. India, I would say, needs a strategic shift. It is Make in India can't be just assembled in India. It has to be invent plus make in India. So can we not create our own indigenous fuel cell? Yes, we can, because we have enormous R&D prowess. So I'm more familiar with CSR, so I'll take some CSR examples because some of these things started in my time. But DST is doing great work, DBT is doing great work, MNRE is doing great work, IITs, many academic institutions. So forgive me if I'm not covering them, because I like to talk about just one of the institutions and what they're doing. So I remember I pioneered this New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative in the year 2000. And the key point was leadership. And it turned out to be India's biggest public-private partnership. It was based on talent, technology, and trust. And we set up some grand challenges, seeking game-changing solutions to become a world leader. We had bold financial instruments, by the way, public and private sector. Private sector would get loan at a very, very low interest rate to be returned only if it was successful. What it meant was that it was not just venture capital, it was adventure capital. Can you just believe it? And taking risk was important, because you can't have leadership. If you are following, there is no risk. But if you are trying to lead with nobody else done, then there's a risk. And we also went for not just best practice, but creating next practice. So this is how it was. You can see that if you see the technology certainty and market certainty, India had operated so far here. That means markets were certain, technology was certain. New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative, NIMITLI for short, worked in areas where technology was uncertain as well as markets were uncertain. That was very bold. And I remember in 2002, I stepped down as a DG in 2006. We launched a program on hydrogen that was conceived. So we were way ahead of time, by the way. 19 years ago, we started that. And we got industry participation right from beginning. We created a methanol reformer for hydrogen production. By 2004, we had these proton exchange membrane electrolyzer program initiated. And then I must say the biohydrogen program was supported by DBT and MNRE. Then PFMC program, then solid oxide fuel cell program, then hydrogen for steel program, and then coal gasification. So this is the order in which actually moved, and we invested 100 crore in fuel cell and electrolyzer R&D, building competencies from scratch. So this is what we need to do. Proactively, aggressively, we need to move. So if you look at the limitedly driven fuel cell, we wanted to create this ecosystem. We had the technology development, vendor development, fundamental research and innovation, and demonstration, all in a public-private partnership mode. So if you see the fuel cell stack, for example, this is efficient, reliable, clean, silent, compact, durable. There's a fuel flexibility. But India had the challenges. Technology is guarded. It is not available for love or for money. Very high capital expenditure. And plus you require a hydrogen infrastructure and associated cost. And the idea was leadership. And Dr. Ashish Lele, who is now currently the director of NCL, under his fantastic leadership, you can just see that it was the technology development where we're trying to create the next practice. And you can see in advanced electrode materials, how many new things were done, which led to 25 plus patents, but also papers, research papers with high impact factor. That is what we need to do. Not just publish or perish, but patent, publish and prosper. And there were advanced polymer membranes also, which were created, which were ahead of the world. And not only that, we made sure that every single component will be made in India. When we say make in India, we have to make sure that we don't get into trouble because we are dependent upon the imported components for something. And you can quite clearly see this has had a tremendous impact. And in fact, this advanced program, High Science to Vendor Development, you can quite clearly see this is high science, the advanced materials, and this is the vendor development that we did in different areas. So in a way, it was a very unique program. And what we need now is we have got the technology, but we require bold policy now. For example, look at mobile towers. Now there are 600,000 towers which are using diesel generating sets, for example. Even if 30% of them are replos, you can see those many systems will be required and so on and so forth. There will be 20,000 new jobs. And look at the environmental impact by replacing diesel generating set. 2.4 MMT of carbon dioxide emission can be prevented, NOx reduction by 75%, SOx reduction by 100%, particulate matter reduction by 80%. So what we require is a bold policy where we say no DG sets, they have to be fuel. So technology will not work. Our scientists will do the technology, but it is extremely important for the government to come out with policy. So in this context, what should be the role of R&D for hydrogen in India? First, innovate in India and make in India. Focus on core technologies, create technology leadership through high-value IP. We should not be followers, we should be leaders. Build strategy and roadmap, help select technology relevant to India, validate technologies when deployed in India, improve technologies. And there are other associated issues. And you can quite clearly see CSR's hydrogen program. We have the static fuel cell here that we are talking about. Then demonstration of the first fuel cell electric vehicle was done last year. This is Mr. Ravi Pandit, Director of NCL. This car was launched. And you can see Honorable President and Honorable then Minister of Science and Technology launching this demonstration of high temperature PFMC based combined cooling and power system. And there are several other sort of development that we have. So it is not that we are entering the field anew. We have started long time ago, almost 2 decades ago, and we have built competencies. So whether it is in generation, whether it is in storage, whether it is in utilization, you can see in each case, these CSR labs have developed actually competencies. So we are on a solid ground to move ahead and fulfill our Honorable Prime Minister's dream to be a leader in this. And beyond R&D, of course, we have to remember that we have to create standards, codes, skill development programs, strategy roadmaps, and public awareness is very important. And there, I would say that media is going to play a role, public lectures, Jigyasa, open data, whole range of things we'll have to do. You know why? On the other day, I was invited by TED to give a TED lecture. And the very first question was, Baba, hydrogen, very dangerous. No, then I had to explain to them, it is non-toxic, it is the lightest element, it can diffuse very quickly, and there are industrial norms and so on and so forth. So parallelly, we must make a movement. I remember Alan Finkel telling me in Australia, they had some 100 meetings across Australia to create awareness. We must do that. Then skilling. These are the areas in which skilling will be required. So our institutions must take that up. And also for testing, these are the areas where testing has to be done. So we have to do a holistic view of this entire thing. The last point I want to make is that we must move quickly. This is my book, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, that I wrote with Ravi Pandit. Both of us are co-authors. And there, the idea is a simple one. And of course, this got the Best Business Book of the Year award in 2019. The idea is a simple one, that why does the frog leap? Because he's afraid of the predator and he jumps a few feet. We must not do that. We must pole vault. The size of the pole is the size of our aspiration. Can we do that? You can just see what we did in terms of mobile data transmission. We were here, others were ahead of us. And after Geo came, we pole vaulted from 155th position to number 1 position in February 20. We did not leapfrog from 155th to 100. We pole vaulted to the first position. Can we do that? So just as Mukesh Ambani was responsible for that, he has also talked about green hydrogen. And he announced this 111 target, and he says efforts are on globally to make green hydrogen initially under $2 per kg, like Australia, they say H2 by 2. But India has always set and achieved even more audacious goals. And therefore, he has set a goal of $1 per kg within a decade. This will make India the first country globally to achieve $1 per kilogram in 1 decade. That is the 111. That is the kind of aspiration we need to have. And then we have to back it up by solid research, which is breakthrough research. We have to stay ahead of the competition, create IP, technology upgradation. We have to attract the best Indian talent through directed funding, basically on this mission, and support high-end research on green hydrogen. And here I'm listing some of the things which look like dreams, but unless you dream, you can't achieve. Like electrochemical green ammonia synthesis from water and air, not the Haber-Bosch process, the old one, which is consuming water. Or third generation electrocatalyst and hold on, or seawater electrolysis, for example, or biohydrogen with innovative microbial conversion processes, high entropy alloys. Here, I must say that we can compete with the best of the world and beat them, provided we dream big. I would say India has been pole vaulting, like world's fastest and largest financial inclusion we did with JAM, for example. We have got a Guinness Book of Record certificate for that. World's fastest and largest jump in mobile data consumption, like I showed. World's fastest and largest deployment of LEDs. It is unbelievable that within 7 years, we moved from 0.2% to 88%. Can you just believe it? And this was done very innovatively by demand aggregation, creating system delivery innovations, etc. So why not dream of world becoming world's fastest and largest transition from gray hydrogen to green hydrogen? Can India do it? I'm confident. Of course, people call me a dangerous optimist, but I must end on an optimistic note that yes, if we determine, we can do that. So finally, I would say it is Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas, green hydrogen for green Atmanirbhar Bharat. That should be our aspiration. Thank you. Thank you very much.